You know, I was just thinking about pastoring. And for those of you that don't know and those that are not pastors, pastoring can be very, very difficult, very hard, very lonely at times. Being the leader sometimes means being the most unpopular. Being the leader sometimes meaning being isolated. But there are moments in pastoring that will make an impact for the rest of your pastoring. There are moments that God sends you a little sign to let you know that you're on the right side and that He's with you. But this past weekend, I had a moment that God reconfirmed and affirmed, and that God just assured me that what you're doing is making an impact. I had something to happen to me that really blessed my soul. It blessed my soul. It blessed my heart. It blessed my mind. I was sitting there at Chick-fil-A eating lunch, my one cheat day. And while eating lunch, a young lady walked in. The young lady, when she walked in, she looked as if she knew who I was. I looked at her, and she started walking toward me. And as she got closer to me, she stopped. She said, "Pastor Bennett." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No, ma'am, I don't." She said, "Pastor Bennett, I met you at Delta State some 12, 13 years ago. You was preaching, and you had everybody in the audience crying. I remember that particular day. I was preaching for the youth conference to about 12, 1,300 youth. She said, everybody in there walked out of there crying because of the sermon that you preached. She said, you were preaching a sermon to our young people, and in this particular sermon, you was talking about teen suicide. As a matter of fact, I do remember, because at that particular point in time, teens were killing themselves at a very alarming rate. They was killing themselves. And I remember a responsibility of preaching is addressing the elephant in the room. And so I dealt with that. Half of the sermon, actually, because I wanted our teens to understand that there was other options, and that there was another way, and there was an out, and that out was God. And I remember real vividly now a young lady holding me at the end of this sermon, and she was holding me tight, crying, telling me thank you. And I remember, I couldn't remember exactly because she was crying so much that she couldn't even really get it out what was going on. But I just remember telling her that I love her and God loves her. And she went on way. But I remember this young lady, she said, "Pastor," she said, "I want you to understand, and I know it was God, providence, the reason why I saw you here today." She said, that particular sermon, and at that particular time that you preached that sermon, my daughter was talking about killing herself. My daughter was dealing with killing herself at that particular point in time. And when you started preaching, I just had to thank God. Emotions started flowing in such a way that I couldn't control myself, because I knew that that was a God thing. Because we was dealing with my daughter. My daughter wanted to kill herself. She was trying to take herself out. And you began to preach about suicide, and you began to give these teens hope that there was another way, and that was relief, and that relief was God. I never will forget that day. Pastor, I never will forget that day. And she said, "Pastor, I want to share something with you." She said, I'm up from North Mississippi, and my daughter attends Jackson State University. She said, "Pastor, that daughter that was trying to kill herself, that daughter, who when you preached that message on that day, some 12, 13 years ago, is graduated from the Jackson State University. And I know it was a God thing. Why would I walk into Chick-fil-A and see you sitting there, and my daughter, who you preached a message to some 12 or 13 years ago, is about to graduate from Jackson State University, and I see the pastor that blessed and spoke into her life? I can tell you that. I can tell you this. That was a moment for me. That was a moment that I would never forget. That was a moment to me confirming and affirming that this gospel that we preach, this gospel in these earthen vessels, is real, is living. And I don't care what nobody else say. I don't care what nobody else say. You can say what you want to say. You can do what you want to do. But I want to tell you this morning that the gospel is real. And the gospel is as powerful today as it was in the New Testament when the church began. It's that same gospel. And that same gospel has the power to save.